The first strike. The night sky over Earth was calm, filled with stars that shimmered like scattered diamonds. No one knew that behind those stars, something terrible was approaching. The alien fleet came without warning, sliding out of warp space like ghosts made of metal. Their ships were vast, glowing with a strange blue light moving in perfect formation. To the human eye, they looked like beautiful stars, until they started to fire. The first blasts tore through the outer defense satellites. The sky burned over. The Pacific as falling debris rained down like meteors. Across every major city, alarms screamed and people rushed out of their homes. No one understood what was happening, not yet. But in orbit, the International Defense Command saw everything. Commander Rhea Voss stood frozen before the holographic display. Red icons spread across the screen like blood drops. She whispered, "They're attacking every orbit line at once." Her second-in-command turned pale. "That's impossible. No species has that many ships." Rhea didn't answer. She just watched as the Earth's first defense fleet was erased. Within minutes, orbital stations were silent. Thousands of soldiers, engineers, and scientists vanished without a trace. Humanity had never faced such power. The alien weapons sliced through steel like it was paper. And still, no message came. No demand, no warning, just destruction, cold and silent. In the underground control room beneath the Atlantic Command Complex, Rhea's team struggled to make contact with anyone outside. Communications were jammed, satellites were gone, only static filled the air. Then through the noise, a faint signal appeared. One of the technicians shouted, "Ma'am, it's coming from Black Zone 9. Rhea's eyes widened. Black Zone 9 was a restricted sector deep under the ocean, a place forgotten by most of the world. She leaned closer to the screen and read the short message. Authorization code X9 Omega Railstorm Protocol. Active. For a second, no one moved. Then her second-in-command whispered, "That's impossible. That project was shut down 50 years ago." Rhea stared at the code, her mind racing. Project Railstorm, humanity's forbidden weapon, a relic of the old war era when Earth feared invasion. It was said to be a cannon large enough to split the sky, powered by the magnetic field of the planet itself. It had been sealed and buried under miles of rock. The government had sworn it would never be used again. But now, the message was clear. The system had reactivated itself. Above them, the alien fleet tightened formation. Dozens of dreadnoughts descended into lower orbit, preparing to strike the cities. The sky turned red from the heat of their engines. In every major city, power grids failed and chaos spread. People prayed, cried, and ran, but there was nowhere to run. Humanity was on the edge of extinction. Rhea clenched her fists. "Prepare the deep-sea relays," she ordered. Her crew hesitated. "Ma'am, that's classified." She cut them off. "We're past classified. If we do nothing, Earth dies." The technicians began typing, their hands shaking. Old access keys, long forgotten, were pulled from archives. Massive power routes began to shift deep under the Atlantic Trench. Energy surged through tunnels that hadn't seen light in half a century. The ocean itself began to vibrate, a low hum rising from the depths. In orbit, alien scanners picked up strange readings. The admiral of the alien fleet, a cold-eyed being named Tashar, tilted his head. "Primitive planet, strange magnetic activity," he said in his language. "Probably geothermal, irrelevant." He ordered his ships to continue bombardment, confident nothing could resist them. He did not know that under the ocean, the greatest weapon of humanity was waking up. Deep beneath layers of steel and rock, a massive chamber glowed to life. Old generators roared, turbines spun, and electric arcs danced across the walls. At the center, a single barrel longer than any city rose from the shadows. It was the Railgun, ancient and sleeping for decades. As its systems reactivated, waves rippled through the ocean above. Fishes fled in panic and the sea boiled around the submerged structure. Warning lights flashed across control panels. One technician whispered, "It's alive. After all this time." Rhea watched from the main command deck as data streamed in. "Stabilize the magnetic coils. Bring reactor A and B online, she said calmly. Inside, she was terrified, but her voice stayed steady. This was no longer a test. This was survival. The first alien strike on the surface hit New London. A blinding beam reduced the skyline to glass. The shockwave spread for miles and millions were gone in seconds. Every screen in the command center flickered. The crew froze, some crying silently, others trembling. Rhea closed her eyes for 1 second, then said, "Target lock on primary enemy ship." The Railgun's targeting system aligned with orbit, its sensors piercing clouds and plasma. A deep metallic sound echoed through the complex. The weapon was charging. The alien admiral noticed a sudden energy spike from beneath the planet's ocean. He frowned. "What is this, a defense weapon?" One of his officers laughed. "They are primitives, they cannot harm us." Tishar didn't reply. He simply watched his sensors. The energy reading kept climbing, higher and higher. Then the ocean burst open. A beam of white-blue light shot into the sky. Every alien sensor screamed in alarm. Before Tishar could react, one of his dreadnoughts vanished. No explosion, no wreckage, just a trail of vapor and molten debris. Silence filled the alien bridge. "On Earth," Rhea whispered, "for New London," and pressed fire again. The railgun had spoken once, and the galaxy had just heard humanity's answer. Project Railstorm. The world shook after the first strike. Across every continent, people looked up. Seeing a flash brighter than the sun, news networks went silent. Cameras caught only light and static. Then came the thunder, a low, endless rumble that rolled across the oceans. Some thought it was an earthquake. Others thought it was the end of the world. But deep under the Atlantic, the truth was awakening. In the command chamber, alarms still blared, but no one moved. Every officer stared at the main display, where one alien warship had vanished from existence. Commander Rhea Voss stood in the middle of it all, her eyes fixed on the readings. "The weapon is functional," whispered her engineer, his voice shaking. "Functional," Rhea replied. "That's one way to describe a god waking up." Project Railstorm had been humanity's most dangerous secret. It was born in fear during the first contact wars, when humanity realized it was not alone. The plan was simple: build a weapon so powerful that no one would dare attack Earth, a single magnetic cannon powered by the core's geothermal energy. It could launch a tungsten slug faster than thought. One shot could vaporize anything in orbit. But the project was shut down before completion. Too dangerous, too unstable, too powerful for peace. Now, after 50 years of silence, it had come alive again. The engineers worked desperately to stabilize the coils. Massive arcs of electricity leapt across the chamber walls. The hum of the weapon grew deeper, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Every few seconds, the ground shook as energy surged through conduits older than any living person. One technician shouted, "Reactor output is unstable, magnetic drift increasing." Rhea replied calmly, "Hold it steady. We don't get a second chance." Above the surface, the alien fleet regrouped. They had lost one dreadnought, but they were far from beaten. Admiral Tishar ordered his ships into bombardment formation. "We will burn this world until nothing remains," he hissed. His second officer, pale and trembling, said, "Admiral, our scans show impossible readings. The planet's magnetic field is distorting." Tishar glared. "I don't care, destroy them." 10 seconds later, the alien fleet opened fire. Columns of plasma fell through the sky like rivers of fire. The upper atmosphere burned, the ozone cracked, and night turned to day. Rhea's command center shook as impacts hit the surface. Ceilings cracked, lights flickered, and the floor trembled. But still the railstorm charged. They had no choice. If they stopped now, Earth was finished. Rhea grabbed the communicator. "Status report. Capacitors at 80%, coils stabilizing," one voice shouted. "Reactor B overheating." Another called. Rhea turned toward the giant blast doors that led deeper into the chamber. Inside that room, a pulsing blue light filled the air, the heart of Railstorm. She walked toward it, every step echoing through the metal floor. The closer she got, the louder the hum became. She placed her hand on the control terminal and whispered, "You were built for this day." Her thoughts flashed back to her father, one of the original scientists of Project Railstorm. He had told her stories of the weapon, of how humanity built it not for conquest but for survival. He had once said, "If the stars ever turn against us, the earth itself will rise to defend her children." Now, standing in that chamber, Rhea finally understood what he meant. Outside, alien dropships entered the atmosphere. Massive crafts, shaped like black wings, began descending toward the Atlantic. They carried invasion troops, thousands of soldiers meant to crush whatever humans remained, but they never reached the water. The ocean began to glow, light radiating from the depths. Sensors aboard the alien ships screamed warnings. A pulse of energy rose upward, pushing back the clouds. The temperature around the area spiked. Waves crashed outward like liquid walls. Then silence for 3 long seconds. Everything stopped. No sound, no movement, no breath. Then the Railstorm fired. The second shot tore through the sky like a spear made of light. The tungsten projectile vaporized everything in its path. 2 alien warships were sliced in half before their shields even registered the attack. The kinetic energy ignited the atmosphere itself. The beam continued into orbit, hitting another ship that exploded into molten fragments. The shockwave shattered windows across entire continents. The world trembled, and for the first time, humanity struck fear into the stars in orbit. Admiral Tishar's fleet was chaos. His command ship spun from the shock, alarms blaring across every deck. His officers shouted, "Multiple losses! Shields failing! Systems collapsing!" He slammed his fist on the console, his voice full of disbelief. How can they have this power? They are primitives. No one answered. They all stared at the tactical display, where a single glowing point pulsed from the surface. Earth's railgun. Tishar growled, "It doesn't matter. Fire everything." "Destroy the source!" Dozens of alien ships angled downward, firing at the ocean. Massive explosions tore through the water. Steam and fire rising skyward, the surface boiled. But the weapon remained untouched. Buried deep below, inside the command room, Rhea watched as pressure warnings filled the screens. "Shields holding at 40%, her engineer reported. Rhea nodded. "Prepare the third shot." The world outside was chaos. Cities burned, ships fell. The sky rained debris, but deep under the sea, the heart of humanity burned brighter. Project Railstorm was no longer a secret, it was a promise. A promise that humanity would not die in silence. The coils began to charge again. Blue lightning dancing across the metal frame. Rhea whispered softly. Let them hear us in that moment. The ocean roared like thunder, and the railgun began to speak again, the mockery of the invaders. The galaxy had seen wars before, but none like this. No one expected a quiet blue planet to roar so loud. The second shot of Railstorm echoed through the void. Its energy rippled across the vacuum, reaching far beyond Earth's orbit. Alien listening stations in nearby systems caught the tremor. They thought it was a supernova, but it was something worse. Humanity fighting back. In orbit, the alien flagship Vraxel Dominion burned. Its outer hull torn and glowing red, Admiral Tishar stood before his shattered command screen. His claws dug into the metal table as sparks rained down from the ceiling. 2 dreadnoughts gone, 10 escorts destroyed, reported his officer. Tishar hissed, How? How can this world possess such power? No one dared answer. The silence on the bridge was heavier than gravity itself. Far below, inside the Atlantic Command Complex, Rhea's team worked through exhaustion. The lights flickered, smoke filled the air, and yet no one stopped. The sound of the Railstorm's cooling systems roared like a living storm. Every console hummed with energy. Every hand trembled with purpose. One engineer whispered, We've done it, we actually did it. Rhea didn't smile. She knew this wasn't victory, not yet. The fleet is still out there, she said. And they're angry, above the planet. Tishar opened a universal channel. His voice, translated into every human frequency, filled every surviving communication screen. He appeared tall, scaled, and cruel, eyes burning like molten metal. Humans, he said slowly, your resistance is amusing. You have delayed the inevitable. Surrender your planet or face extinction. His words dripped with arrogance, his smile cruel. Across every bunker, every shelter, billions of humans watched his broadcast. For a moment, fear filled the air again. But then Rhea stepped forward, Her image projected from the command room. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She simply said, "Transmit nothing. Let the cannon speak for us." Her words spread across every control deck. Every surviving military post in that instant. Humanity's silence became its answer, and the Railstorm began to charge once more. The alien admiral watched from his bridge, sensors tracking a massive energy buildup from beneath the oceans. He laughed, a sound like metal grinding on stone. "They think they can repeat their trick," he said. "Prepare the counterstrike." He ordered his fleet to move closer to the planet. Massive battleships surrounded the Earth, each the size of a continent. Their weapons glowed, ready to unleash enough fire to melt the crust. Rhea's engineers worked faster than ever before. Coolant levels dropped, magnetic fields wavered, and alarms screamed from every screen. "Power overload imminent," shouted one technician. Rhea's voice was calm. "Stabilize it manually. Route all backup power to the main coil." One of the engineers looked terrified. "That could kill the reactor team." Rhea stared at him, her eyes cold but steady. "They already know that," she said. "And they're still working." Down in the reactor chamber, 3 engineers stood surrounded by fire and steam. Sparks rained like stars, systems overloaded, but they refused to leave. They knew what was at stake. One of them, a young man named Malik, pressed his hand against the control panel. He smiled weakly. "For Earth," he whispered. Then he turned the manual override key. The reactor stabilized for a moment, just long enough for Railstorm to charge fully. Then the room exploded in white light. On the surface, the ocean split apart again. A column of blue light rose into the sky, twisting like a god's breath. In orbit, the alien fleet began firing, thousands of plasma bolts raining down on Earth. But they were too late. The railgun fired. The projectile screamed through the void, a tungsten rod wrapped in a magnetic storm. It cut through the alien bombardment, vaporizing energy beams in its path. Then it struck the center of the fleet. The explosion was silent but endless. A blinding wave of light consumed everything it touched. 7 ships disappeared in an instant, 2 more torn apart by the shockwave. Fragments of alien hulls fell toward the planet like burning meteors. Tushar's bridge was chaos, crew shouted. Systems failed, and the ship lurched sideways. He roared in disbelief. "This is impossible. This planet is cursed." But his words trembled, not from rage, from fear. He had underestimated humanity. He had mocked them, called them primitive, weak, emotional. But now he saw what emotion could do when fueled by survival. Back on Earth, cheers erupted across hidden bunkers and ruined streets. People hugged, cried, shouted. The Railstorm's blast had lit up the night sky like dawn itself. But in the command chamber, Rhea didn't celebrate. She stood before the monitors, eyes fixed on the sky. "Don't cheer yet," she said softly. "They'll come again." Her words were true even as the Railstorm cooled. Alien reinforcements began warping into the system. Dozens more ships, larger and older, their hulls marked with symbols of ancient empires. They had heard the distress call, and they were coming, but so was humanity's answer. Because deep beneath the waves, the coils of Railstorm still glowed, not dying, but evolving, adapting to every shot. The weapon had a mind of its own now, a learning system that grew stronger with each discharge. Rhea looked at the readings and whispered, "You're learning, aren't you?" The screen pulsed once as if answering her, and for a heartbeat, she almost thought the weapon understood above the planet. The surviving alien ships tried to regroup, but their communications were jammed, their sensors blinded by magnetic interference. The very air around Earth seemed alive with static energy, as if the planet itself had chosen to fight. Tushar glared at the glowing blue sphere below. "This world, it defies the stars," he said, and deep inside, for the first time in his life, the Admiral felt something new. Fear. The mockery was over. Now the galaxy would remember why no one should ever provoke humanity. The sound of judgment. The galaxy had gone silent for the first time in centuries. Every listening post across the stars received the same signal. Static. A silence that followed an impossible blast from a backwater planet. In that silence, every commander, every scientist, and every admiral knew one thing. Humanity had just done the unthinkable in orbit. The surviving alien ships floated in confusion, their scanners blinded, their sensors screaming errors. Half of their communication network was gone, burned out by magnetic interference. The once proud fleet that had come to conquer Earth now drifted like broken toys. Among them, the flagship Vraxel Dominion limped, its engines crippled, its crew terrified. Admiral Tishar stood at the bridge, staring at the blue planet below. Smoke filled the air, alarms wailed, and the fear in his crew's eyes was unmistakable. He growled, "How can this be? How can a young race build such horror?" Down on Earth, the railstorm chamber was chaos. Steam poured from broken pipes, alarms screamed, and power conduits glowed red-hot. Technicians ran through flooded corridors as sparks rained from the ceiling. Every system was beyond safe limits, yet the weapon still lived. Its coils hummed like a beast breathing between kills. Commander Rhea Voss stood among the noise, her face pale but determined. "Status?" she shouted. One engineer answered. "We've lost reactor stability, but the weapon core is still holding. Can we fire again?" Rhea asked. He hesitated. "Yes, but another shot might collapse the structure." Rhea closed her eyes for a moment, hearing the echo of her father's words. "If the stars ever turn against us, the Earth itself will rise to defend her children." Then she whispered, "Then let it rise above the planet." The alien admiral tried to rally his fleet. "Regroup," he barked. "Form up on my command, target the ocean coordinates, destroy the source." His remaining captains obeyed, though their voices trembled. Massive ships turned their cannons toward the Atlantic, glowing with deadly plasma light. The atmosphere shimmered as hundreds of weapons charged at once. From space, the planet looked like it was being aimed at by suns. But deep beneath those waves, humanity's answer was already forming. The Railstorm's core began to glow brighter than ever before. Magnetic fields twisted around it, bending space itself. The hum became a roar, deep and thunderous, vibrating through rock and steel. Engineers shielded their ears, their teeth rattling from the sound. And then it happened. The railgun spoke again. A blast of energy erupted upward, slicing through the ocean. The water exploded into the sky, forming a towering wall of steam. The shot launched at near-light velocity, a tungsten spear wrapped in plasma fire. The moment it broke into orbit, it shattered through the first alien ship like glass, then the second, then the third. Within a single second, 8 ships vanished, their remains glowing like falling stars. The sound reached Earth moments later. Rolling like thunder across continents, windows shattered, mountains trembled, and oceans surged. The world itself seemed to roar in defiance. Billions of humans watched the spectacle through surviving networks. The light from the blast painted the night sky blue. In shelters and ruins, survivors fell to their knees. Crying, praying, cheering for the first time, humanity saw not its doom, but its strength. The Railstorm had become their voice. And the sound of judgment had begun in orbit. Admiral Tishar's ship spun out of control. The bridge was a storm of flames and screams. He clutched the console, refusing to fall, his eyes wide with disbelief. "This cannot be," he muttered. "They are supposed to be weak." But even as he spoke, his sensors flashed a new warning. "Energy spike! Another launch incoming!" his officer screamed. Tishar turned to the viewport just in time to see a blue streak racing toward him. He roared in defiance. "No! I am Tishar, breaker of worlds." The streak struck, and the Vraxel Dominion was gone down below. Rhea stood silent as the Railstorm's energy readings fell. The weapon's coils cooled, steam filling the massive chamber. Her crew cheered, some cried. Others simply collapsed from exhaustion. But Rhea didn't celebrate. She walked to the main console and looked at the display. Dozens of alien signals were gone, erased. But far beyond the range of Earth's sensors, something else was moving. A much larger fleet, a response force, an empire's vengeance. "They'll send more," she whispered. "They'll never stop." Her engineer looked up weakly. "Then we'll keep firing?" Rhea smiled faintly. "You sound like my father." She turned to the viewing monitor, showing the stars beyond the smoke. "Maybe one day," she said softly. "They'll learn to listen before they mock." On distant worlds, alien rulers gathered in their grand councils. Their faces were grim, their voices hushed. One spoke in disbelief. "A death world has awakened." Another whispered, "We thought humanity was extinct after the Sol Wars." And a third said, "No, they are not extinct. They are reborn." Messages spread through the galaxy like fire. "Do not engage Earth, do not provoke humanity. Do not test the Terrans," the legend had begun. The Railstorm's single voice had become a warning, echoing across the stars. On Earth, Rhea stood before the weapon, watching its faint blue glow fade. The air was heavy with dust and ozone. She placed a hand on the rail's cold surface and whispered, "Sleep, until they need you again." The coils hummed once in reply, almost as if it understood her. Outside, the dawn was breaking, the smoke cleared, and sunlight glinted off the ocean. Humanity had survived its judgment, and in the silence that followed, every survivor heard it. Not the sound of victory, but the sound of Earth breathing again. The fear in the stars. Across the galaxy, a strange silence spread. Empires that had once spoken loudly now whispered. Merchants canceled their routes to the Sol system. Diplomats refused transmissions. Everywhere, one question burned like fire. What did the humans do? In the outer colonies of the Threx Dominion, astronomers replayed the same footage. A single magnetic burst from a small blue world had erased an entire fleet. One scientist whispered, "That's not a weapon. That's a planet waking up." His superior slapped the console. "Delete that recording before command sees it." But it was too late. The data was already spreading. The legend of the Railstorm was moving faster than light, on the edge of known space. In a smoky council chamber filled with alien ambassadors, the Galactic Council gathered in emergency session. Their holographic faces flickered with unease. "The Terran incident cannot be ignored," said the counselor of the Velthar Union. "They have destroyed an entire fleet with one strike." Another voice, sharp and panicked, shouted, "A death world cannot be allowed to rise again." But the eldest among them, a crystalline being older than most stars, spoke softly. Aloud, "No one allowed humanity to exist," they endured. The chamber fell silent. Every race there remembered old stories. Stories told in whispers. Stories about a violent, unpredictable species that fought extinction with bare hands. The ones who turned asteroids into weapons. Who built ships from ruins and called them home. The ones who once burned half the Orion Spur just to survive. They had thought those stories were myths. But myths had railguns now, far from the council. In the shadowed halls of the Corthan Empire, the Emperor sat before a vast star map. His generals trembled as they reported the loss of their allied fleet. 30 warships destroyed. Admiral Tishar's flagship confirmed lost, said one. The Emperor's voice was low, almost a whisper. "By whom?" The general swallowed hard. "By humans, my lord." The Emperor leaned back in his throne, claws tapping the armrest. Humans. They were a dying race, their colonies abandoned, their armies scattered. "Yes, my lord, but they have a weapon now, one that bends the laws of war." The Emperor turned toward the stars of Sol, his eyes narrowing. "Then we will not make their mistake," he said. "We will not mock them." Meanwhile, on Earth the world was still rebuilding. Fires burned in the ruins of cities, but so did hope. People came out from bunkers, covered in dust but smiling through tears. The sky was filled with falling light, pieces of destroyed alien ships glowing like drifting stars. Children pointed upward, thinking it was a meteor shower. To them it was beautiful. To their parents, it was a reminder. Humanity had fought gods and lived in the Atlantic Command Complex. Commander Rhea Voss stood before the Railstorm chamber. The weapon was silent now, steam rising from its massive coils. She touched the rail's surface, still warm. "You did well," she whispered. As if speaking to an old friend, her engineers were exhausted, some asleep on the floor, but when she looked around, she saw pride in their faces, not fear. They had faced extinction and then won. "Commander," said one officer softly, "we're receiving new transmissions." Rhea looked up. "From who?" The officer hesitated. "Everyone." Screens flickered to life. Messages from dozens of worlds, dozens of languages. Some begged for peace. Others offered treaties. A few only said one thing: "We will not fight you." Rhea watched them all, her expression unreadable. "Good," she said quietly. "Maybe they're finally learning. Far beyond Earth, on a world of silver deserts and black skies, a young alien cadet trained under the harsh light of twin suns. His instructor threw him a data pad, displaying footage of the human railgun firing. "Study this," the instructor said. "This is why we never underestimate humans." The cadet frowned. "They are small, their ships are few." The instructor's eyes darkened. "So were their numbers during the first contact wars, and yet they burned half our fleets." He looked toward the stars and whispered, "Pray you never face them." In deep space, the wreckage of the alien armada drifted. Twisted metal floated in silence, reflecting the distant sun among the debris. Black boxes transmitted one final message, a voice recording of Admiral Tishar, moments before his death. They fired once, he had said, his voice broken, and the universe changed. The transmission was picked up by listening posts across 3 sectors, and every species that heard it fell silent. Back on Earth, Rhea sat alone in the control room. She gazed at the blue glow of the Railgun's core, dim now, resting. Her hand trembled slightly as she held a small hollow picture of her father. "You were right," she whispered. "The Earth did rise." Outside, the waves calmed, the air cleared. For the first time in weeks, she heard birds singing again. It sounded almost strange after all the thunder. Yet deep inside her, she knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy would not forget what happened here. Some would come for vengeance, others for fear, and when they did, Earth would be ready. Because now the galaxy understood something it had forgotten. Humanity was not a colony to be conquered. It was a force to be respected. A race that fought the dark and built weapons from its own nightmares. A people who refused to kneel, and somewhere beyond the stars, the legend of Earth's railgun spread like wildfire. They called it the voice of humanity, a weapon that spoke only once, but the whole galaxy listened. The last transmission. High above the scarred Earth, wreckage drifted like a silver graveyard. Shards of alien hulls reflected the sunlight as silent reminders of what had happened. For weeks no one dared approach the Sol system. Every probe that entered vanished under a storm of magnetic interference. It was as if the planet had drawn a curtain across its skies, and behind that curtain humanity was rebuilding, quietly, deliberately. Inside the Atlantic Command Complex, Commander Rhea Voss listened to the static on her comm panel. Occasionally a whisper of alien code slipped through. Frightened voices. Pleas for negotiation, but she did not answer. Her people were busy pulling survivors from the ruins, repairing satellites, feeding the hungry. There was no time for politics, only work, only survival. Then, on the 23rd day after the battle, a clear signal arrived. It was broadcast on every known frequency, wrapped in layers of diplomacy and fear. The crest of the Galactic Council shimmered in the air. 1,000 alien ambassadors appeared as holograms around Rhea's desk. Their faces were pale, their voices careful. "Commander Voss of Earth," the speaker began. "We seek peace." Rhea remained silent. The envoy continued. "The destruction of Admiral Tishar's fleet has shaken the balance of the galaxy. We request dialogue, we request restraint." Around her, the engineers stopped working. Listening, they expected anger, perhaps even triumph. But Rhea simply walked toward the central console and touched the controls. On the screen behind her, images of Earth filled the frame, burned cities, broken ships, but also people rebuilding, children planting flags on the rubble, soldiers handing out food, families helping one another. She turned back to the council holograms and spoke softly. "You attacked our world without warning. You killed billions, and now you ask for peace." The counselor's voice trembled. "We did not approve that assault. It was a rogue action of one empire." Rhea's eyes narrowed. "And yet the rest of you watched." Silence fell. She leaned closer, her voice low and steady. "Earth has no intention of conquering anyone. But remember this, and we will never kneel again." Then she ended the transmission. Across the stars, the message replayed endlessly. Some called it arrogance, others called it prophecy. In every language, it translated the same way. Humanity will stand within hours. Thousands of smaller nations beyond the council began sending their own secret transmissions. Not of threats, but of admiration. They had lived under fear for generations. Ruled by empires older than history, now they had seen a small world defy them all. Whispers spread in dark corridors and military barracks. "If the humans can fight the council," they said, "maybe we can too." Meanwhile, inside the Railstorm chamber, the weapon lay quiet, its coils dim, its core humming faintly like a sleeping heart. Technicians moved carefully around it, afraid to touch anything. One of them, young Malik's apprentice, stood before the rail's surface. He whispered, "He gave his life so this could fire. We owe him everything." Rhea heard him and nodded. "Tell the world his name," she said, "so they remember who pulled the trigger that saved them." Outside, the ocean was calm again. Sunlight glimmered on the waves, turning the water gold. Ships carrying supplies crossed the Atlantic, their wakes tracing scars on the surface, but beneath that calm, new power cables were being laid, new tunnels carved deeper into the crust. The engineers called it maintenance, Rhea called it insurance. At night she stood on the balcony overlooking the sea. Stars shimmered above, distant and cold. She thought of her father, of every human who had died for this planet, and she spoke quietly to the horizon. "They think the war is over," she said. "But this is only the pause between breaths. Beyond the solar system, the Galactic Council held another meeting. Fear had replaced arrogance. They argued, shouted, demanded sanctions, but none dared suggest another invasion. A single phrase kept appearing in their reports. "Do not provoke the Deathworlders," and yet, somewhere in the darkness, curiosity stirred. Races who had never seen Earth began to study it. Spies were sent. Probes disguised as comets drifted toward its orbit. They wanted to learn the secret of the Railstorm. Was it machine or monster, weapon or living thing? Every attempt ended the same way, in static. Burned circuits, silence. The weapon watched even while sleeping. Its sensors reached beyond the sea into space itself. It listened to the stars the way a hunter listens to the forest. Waiting, remembering, weeks later, Rhea received one final transmission. It came from deep space, untraceable, only a voice. A whisper through the static. "We remember what you did, human," it said. "And we will come." Rhea stared at the speaker for a long time, then replied quietly, "Then you will hear the railgun again." She turned off the lights. The chamber went dark except for the faint blue glow of the sleeping coils. Outside, waves crashed against the shore like slow heartbeats. And somewhere in that rhythm, the planet seemed to breathe with her. Not afraid, not angry, simply ready. Because peace for humanity was never the end of war. It was the silence between one shot and the next. When the railgun spoke, the stars were quiet again, too quiet. Every sensor in the outer colonies showed the same thing. A perfect stillness across the Sol sector. No transmissions, no trade, no ships. Only a single blue world turning beneath a veil of drifting wreckage. Rumors filled the void. Some said Earth had burned itself to ash. Others said the humans had gone dark on purpose, waiting, listening. Whispers spread through command halls and taverns alike. "Don't go near the Death World," they said. It remembers in the Galactic Council's Grand Chamber. The panic had not faded. Thousands of delegates argued beneath the glow of their suns. "We must disarm them," shouted one. "They must be contained before that weapon fires again," cried another. But no one volunteered to lead that mission. Even the bravest captains refused. They had all heard Admiral Tishar's last transmission, a scream cut short by light. Far from their debating voices, a lone cargo vessel crept toward the solar system. The captain, a traitor named Varric, had once laughed at human myths. Now his hands shook on the controls. He had come not to fight, but to see, to learn if the stories were true. His ship drifted past the shattered hulls of alien cruisers, their surfaces scorched black by kinetic fire. As he approached Earth, his sensors caught something impossible. A rhythmic pulse, deep and slow, echoing from beneath the ocean. Boom. Pause. Boom. Like a heartbeat the size of a world. Inside the Atlantic Command Complex, humanity was not idle. Factories worked day and night. Engineers reforged the debris of the enemy into new alloys. Old orbital platforms were repaired, armed, linked into a single network. Rhea Voss walked through the hangar where the next generation of defense ships waited. Small, fast, and each carrying a miniature version of the Railstorm coils. She smiled faintly. "They won't face us with fear next time," she murmured. "They'll face us with respect." Her communications officer hurried to her side. "Commander, an unknown vessel just entered orbit." "Non-hostile signal," Rhea frowned. "Visual." The screen flickered. A small freighter. Unarmed, waving a white beacon. "Put it through," she said. The alien captain appeared, his eyes wide with awe. "Human commander," he said carefully. "I come in peace," Rhea studied him. "Then why come at all?" He hesitated. "Because every corner of the galaxy fears you, and fear grows in darkness. I came to see if you are monsters or something worse." Rhea's voice softened. "We are neither. We are survivors." Then she ended the call. Down in the Railstorm chamber, technicians prepared a test cycle. The coils gleamed with renewed life, smoother, stronger, cleaner. Humanity had learned to tame the monster it had awakened, not to hide it, but to master it. The chamber lights dimmed as power surged through the rails. A vibration filled the air, steady and low. The engineers stepped back, holding their breath. When the countdown reached 0, the railgun spoke again. This time it was not a weapon of war. The slug soared harmlessly into deep space, carrying a beacon signal coded in every known language. A message broadcast to the entire galaxy. It said only 3 words, simple and clear. "We are here." Across thousands of systems, receivers lit up. The message cut through hyperspace storms and military firewalls. It reached empires, pirates, colonists, and rebels. Some cheered, some wept, others trembled because those 3 words carried a weight the stars had forgotten. In the council hall, the elder crystalline being closed its eyes. "The humans have spoken," it said, "not with violence, but with memory, and in every language." The translation was the same. "The Railgun speaks for Earth." Back on the planet, the night was calm. Rhea stood on the command balcony as waves lapped against the fortress walls. Behind her, the great cannon rested, steam rising gently from its cooling coils. She looked up at the constellations, once symbols of fear, now witnesses to defiance beside her. A young cadet whispered, "Commander, do you think they'll ever come back?" Rhea smiled, not cruelly, but with quiet strength. "They will," she said, "because the stars always test what they fear. And when they do, we'll remind them who we are." The wind carried her words out over the sea. The ocean shimmered under the starlight, reflecting the faint blue glow of the weapon below. It pulsed once as if answering her promise. Far beyond, in the dark between worlds, countless civilizations paused to listen. And in that endless silence, the legend of humanity settled deep into galactic memory. From then on, whenever new worlds spoke of power, they spoke carefully because somewhere across the stars, a single word echoed, Earth, and whenever the arrogant forgot, the Railgun would speak again, not in rage but in remembrance, to remind the universe that even in the coldest void, there was one voice no empire could silence, the voice of humanity.